Welcome back to the channel, and today I'm gonna put my brain to the test once again, and I'm gonna try to use some of the new logic to see if I can figure out how to build a somewhat immersive gear shifting system for a car. Now, there are some immersion limitations that I'm not gonna know how to overcome. The main one being that gear shifting isn't all about speed, it's also about torque, and lower gears tend to have better acceleration than higher gears. That I don't really know how I'm going to simulate, rather than it just being faster and getting faster and faster through the gears. But I want it to actually really feel like we're shifting gears and not just increasing speed, which is going to make things a little bit more complicated for me, but I think it's possible, and I'll probably be able to work my way through it. It might not be the most efficient and straightforward way to do it, but I think I can do it one way or another. So before we even build a car here, I'm just going to focus on the actual logic system, because we're gonna need to fit it in the car, and I'm gonna try to organize things so I understand what's going on this time, unlike what I did with my rechargeable ammo thing in that video. So let's pick how many gears we want. I'm gonna say 5 gears. All right, so we have an accumulator, maximum 5. This is gonna represent our gears. We're gonna click on use steps. I'm gonna say shift is to shift up and control is to shift down. All right, so now when I press shift, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 gears. Technically we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, this is already getting a little bit more complicated. I'm already seeing some complications I did not anticipate in my head once I'm following through what I'm doing. All right, so I think 0 should be no power, and then we only get power once we get into first gear. That does make sense, doesn't it? All right, let's take a number display and route this out to the number display. This is going to show what gear we are in. All right, there we go. So I don't know how realistic it's gonna be to see the visual impacts of this, but let me slap a wheel and an engine down here, because I want to see if I can visualize. All right, so here's like, okay, you can hear the power, I guess, but seeing whether the wheel is spinning faster or slower, there is a blur effect, I guess, that increases. So the simple version of the idea that I want to do is for each gear, we're going to send a fraction of the maximum power to the engines. So if you want 5th gear to be maximum power, I think each gear would then just be 20% power. Although I'm not 100% sure that these outputs are actual percentages, like a linear increase, but I'm just gonna assume that and just go based off of that. So I think the easiest way to do it would be to just have equals. So when this equals first gear, it will output 20.2 to the engine. So then this number block goes into that. And then we just keep going down for each gear, and we just increase each subsequent one by 0.2, and then the final one is 1. So now you can see each one of these has an output 0.2, 0.4, 0.6, 0.8, and 0.1. But this has to be threshold 1, this has to be threshold 2, threshold 3, threshold 4, and then threshold 5. So it'll only output these things when it is equal to that number. Oh, okay. And then we need an AND gate. All right, so now we need, this is my output. I press W. Oh, wait, I'm gonna need like a reverse gear. I'm not just gonna be able to go back, which means I'm not gonna be able to like slow down. How would I do slowing down with this? Wait, maybe this will work. I don't know. This got, all of a sudden, this got a lot more complicated, because right now I was going to hook all these up to the engine, but that means as soon as I shift into the gear, it's just going full throttle in that gear, and I can't, like, press the gas pedal. How do I add a gas pedal function into this? All right, so if this is my output, W and S, we need it to only trigger the engine when any of these are triggered and my W or S is triggered, but the problem is, then it's gonna send all of that into a single output. All right, I'm stuck on this right now, but I gotta think through it a little bit more, but I just did a quick test of the actual gearing, which works, as you can see. If I press shift up, you see it goes into gear 1, tire starts spinning, and if you listen to the engine 2, go into gear 2, gear 3, gear 4, and gear 5. And then we can also gear back down. Now, the issue I'm having right now is how to have these respond to when I press W, but still send the same output as what this is supposed to send. All right, I think I gotta reset my mindset here. I'm trying to think about it after the gear shifting. I think I need to have the SW qualification happen before the gear shifting. Okay, so now the way I have it set up only works for first gear. So you can see that number down the bottom represents the output power. So I'm pressing W, nothing's happening. I shift into first gear. The number on the top right represents the gear I'm in. And I press W, you can see it outputs that gear's value. But then when I shift gears, I'm still in first gear. And I don't quite know why for that yet. Because this AND gate applies to all of these. Okay, because the threshold has to be equal to 2, but it is adding the 1 here. That's because, yeah, these are only... I set this up now so that these are only receiving from the AND gate, which then negates this whole... the gear shifting. So that was a mistake. But if I add an arithmetic logic gate to... add things together, it's then going to override the AND gate qualification. So every single time I try to fix one thing, it negates the other. And I'm trying to figure out how to overcome this. I think I thought of a weird workaround that's gonna solve my problem, but probably is not the best way to do it. But if it solves my problem, that's what I'm looking for. Okay, so here's the really weird solution. We got an arithmetic block here that receives from both my output, which is W, as well as the gear shifting thing. So instead of this number just representing gear 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as raw numbers, I made this output 0.1. And then I just kind of have this add, actually it doesn't really matter what I do here. This could be 0, but I just have this add 0.1, which is just gonna offset it. So now you can see with that number block, what is coming out of the addition block. So when I'm in gear 0 and I press W, it goes to 0.1. When I'm in gear 1, it changes to 1, but when I press W, it's just gonna add that in there as 0.1. And then, so basically everything becomes a 0.1 of the gear. So if I'm in 5th gear, it goes 5.1 when I press W. So now what that means is if I set these to 1.1, 2.1, and so on, now these aren't going to activate unless they're exactly equal to that. Which means even though they're getting another number like 4 isn't going to do anything. So it's going to be like no gas is being inputted. But 4.1, when I press W, is going to trigger it. All right, so now nothing happens when I press W until I get to gear 1. Nothing happens when I'm at gear 1 until I press W. There we go. And then we stop. Good. Okay, this is working. And then I shift again. There we go. Gear 2, gear 3, gear 4, and oh wait, gear 5 is not working. Wait, is that 5.1 at gear 5? 5.1. This must not have gotten saved. Oh, I put 6.1 typo. All right, gear 2, 3, 4, 5. There we go. And we can see the output power represented by the bottom number display. Okay, solved that problem in a weird way. So now what I want is when I press S, I want it to go to gear 0, and then I want a reverse to happen because we need to be able to brake when we press S. All right, so now what I'm doing is I add another arithmetic logic gate set to multiply, and then I have my output as S, which will multiply by -5, which will then go into the accumulator, which should reset it back to 0 no matter what gear I'm in when I press S. I'm gonna go up to gear 2, and when I press S, you can see it goes down to 0, but then I also kind of want that to output to the engine, which I think to this arithmetic gate maybe. So there's -5. So now I'm just going backwards at max speed. But maybe I want backwards to be more realistic because backwards is never as fast as forwards. So instead of outputting this, so this is essentially my reverse function. So I will just take another comparison gate. And when this receives the -5 from my reverse, it's just going to output -0.2. So we essentially get first gear in reverse going out here. There we go. We have an issue though, because now if I'm doing reverse and then I press W, nothing happens. I will just still be rolling backwards. So I need to shift into first gear in order to brake from going backwards. It makes it complicated that Trailmakers doesn't have a braking button. Because whether you're in reverse or in first gear, you should be able to slow down without having to switch to reverse or first gear. But that's what Trailmakers are kind of making me do. And there's probably an even more complicated logic thing I could do to have it do that automatically. But I don't know if I want that right now. All right, I'm going to try it. Speed sensor. If I am going backwards and I press W, this should switch us into first gear. The thing is right now, I need to actually move backwards. So let's just slap a couple of functional wheels down on this thing real quick. These 3 should be good enough. All right, so can't go forward. Shift into first gear. Now I can kind of go forward. Now reverse. I can brake and go backwards. Now if I press W, it switches into first gear. I did it. It was actually that simple. Now I will only automatically switch into first gear if I'm going backwards. So I essentially want to be able to slow down. It'll automatically switch to first gear. And then I can just gear down to 0 if I want no more control as well. All right, so then first gear, second gear. Oh, let me get my my HUD on. Second gear, third gear. All right, now we got final gear. And then braking. We're on to something now. The more complicated version I wanted to do was I wanted there to be a slight, like, hiccup between switching gears for immersion. Because when you switch gears, you usually do slow down just a little bit as the gears switch. So I kind of wanted to add that in here. This was way more than I expected it to be, so I might ruin it all by trying to add something else. All right, I am on to something. So I have an AND gate here that when I press shift, it outputs a value of 0.2. Somewhat arbitrary. It just has to be something that offsets the value of these comparison logic gates from their designated threshold. So when I press shift, it just adds that value into these. So you can see when I'm in gear 1 and I'm holding down W now, and now when I press shift, you can see I've shifted to gear 2 according to the accumulator value, but until I release the shift button, gear 2 will not activate. So I believe I can tell it to do this for a duration of whatever. Let's just say 1 second for now, just to confirm. Okay, so all right, so that's unfortunate. So the duration only applies to if I hold it down. So the pause function only happens after the duration. So I think I need to create a circuit for this to work, perhaps. So I'll put it on a maximum of 0.2 because that'll be the output of the accumulator, which now goes into these gears. And then it sends that signal back to my AND gate here, which has now the delay. It delays by a second before giving that output back to the accumulator, resetting it with the -1. So now you can see when I press shift, accumulator turns on and turns off after a second. Turns on, turns off after a second. So now if I'm going and I'm holding W and I press shift, you can see we actually have a 1 second delay before the next gear activates. Now with that accumulator, I can designate how long I want that delay to actually be. And according to Google, the average time it takes a manual car driver to shift gears is between 500 milliseconds and 1 second for vertical gear changes, and 1 to 2 seconds for horizontal. So I guess 1 second's kind of like not bad. It feels a little bit long for me here, so I'm just going to change the delay to half a second. We'll go on the shorter side of things. All right, so first gear, second gear. Yeah, it's not too bad. Third gear, fourth gear, fifth gear, and then actually kind of cool. I can go back down gears faster, which feels like it's kind of realistic because you can go from 5th down to 0 in one shift. So one thing I also was thinking about was, could I add that turbo sound using like these every single time it shifts? So now when we shift. Oh, yeah. All right, this is actually pretty cool if you watch my character. So let's go into first gear. There we go. And now watch my character when I switch gears. Second gear. Third gear. So you can see like the little jolt from shifting gears on the actual character, which I think is actually pretty cool. All right, I don't have any steering on this thing or anything. There we go. We got final gear. Oh, I've somehow broken my logic. Now the accumulator at the top was stuck on. I don't even know how that happens. Oh, if I hold shift for more than the delay. All right, I fixed it. I essentially set, you can see if I hold down shift now, that logic gate at the top left actually constantly will pulse using the delay and pause button. So that way it never gets stuck. As long as it keeps sending that pulse, once I let go of shift, that pulse is gonna reset the accumulator, which is what's responsible for causing the turbo thing. Okay, I think I've built the entire system the way that I envisioned it. I can shift between 5 gears of varying speeds. I can go in reverse. It's not quite as, the reverse thing isn't quite as immersive because of the lack of braking stuff. So I gotta essentially group braking and reverse into one thing, which I just do with the push of a button. I just instantly go into the reverse gear, which is terrible for the transmission, but you know, it's not a real transmission. I can use forward for braking when I'm in reverse and then go into first gear. And then there is an actual like little bit of a turbo hiccup thing happening in between gear shifting. So now let's just let's put this on a car. All right, I've spent way more time shaping this thing than I intended on, but I think, oh, I didn't put any engines in it. There's no engines in this thing right now. Where do I put the engines? Hold on. I think there's some room back here. There we go. Just slap a couple of these in here. Make sure I get rid of those controls and set the green logic gate going out to them. All right, so now, oh, I got to shift into first gear. There we go. I need my suspension to be a little bit stiffer. All right, so here we go. Does this thing drive okay? It does drive okay. Here, let's go up to maximum gear. There we go. I think we're at maximum gear. Oh, it tips over very easily. I can probably fit a gyro stabilizer in here somewhere. All right, also, I want the 5th gear to have a constant little boost. So I think if I just have that last comparison logic gate output, we'll get a constant boost from the mini thrusters there. So I think this is 2nd gear. And then 3rd gear. 100 miles per hour. 4th gear. And then 5th gear. There we go. It still has a little psh, psh. And then we have constant for 5th gear. All right, and now if I try to turn, oh yeah, there we go. This actually, with the gyro stabilizer, works pretty well. I'm actually pretty happy with this. Then we can slow down. We can revert. This is our reverse gear. This is as fast as we can go in reverse, so it is slower backwards than forwards. And we can go into first gear. And then we got a shift. All right, let me paint this thing up a little bit. All right, here it is. I think this is probably one of the best looking cars I've ever built. So I also added a license plate, but the license plate is actually, it tells you what gear you're in, because sometimes it's nice to actually be able to know what gear you're in if you forgot how many shifts you've done. So we're in 3rd gear, we're in 4th gear. And we are in 5th gear, which gives us nitrous boost. All right, then we can gear down. Let's go down to first gear. All right, I think it works pretty well. I even made use of the new driver's seat in there too. Oh, let's check out what first person looks like. It's actually not that bad. I probably shouldn't have colored the seats the same color as the actual car though. But yeah, this view is actually pretty decent in first person. I don't have any room to put anything in here. Like I wanted to put a gear shifter thing in here, but the seats are taking up all of the hitbox. I think matte black for the seats is a good look. There we go, that looks better. Wow, there's actually a really nice field of view in this thing. Oh man, oh, those tires look a little bit messed up. Yeah, this is probably one of the best looking cars I've done, using a lot of the new parts and the new decals as well. That's how I've come up with a gear shifting mechanism. I'm sure there are much cleaner ways to do it, but as someone who is not engineer brained when it comes to logic and stuff, this is what I was able to figure out on my own with all the new blocks. So I'm curious if there's any other things you'd like to see me attempt to do with the new capabilities in the latest update. Because the ammo depletion thing that I experimented with in a recent episode, and then this gear shifting thing, are only 2 few examples. I'm sure there's a lot of other stuff you could do there, but a lot of it's probably way more complicated than I might be able to accomplish in a single video. But I'm definitely looking for ideas, so leave those comments down below. And if you guys enjoyed this video, you'll probably enjoy some more you can find right here on the end screen. Hope this video has earned your subscription. Anyway, this has been ScrapMan, and I'll see you next time. Bye.